Welcome to this episode of the Better Gaming Show, the event and podcast series dedicated to all aspects of ethical gambling, where we discuss how to make gambling and gaming safe, secure, and socially balanced for everyone. Today, I'm speaking with Kiki Marriott, who has experience on both sides of gambling hard. Firstly, as someone who has personally dealt with gambling addiction, and then now as an advocate working towards helping others, and particularly profiles which are not commonly associated with gambling harm. So Kiki, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's great to have you on. We are likely to go off script on this podcast episode, but what I've done is I've structured our conversation today around three main areas. Firstly, I want to talk about your personal story, understanding your journey from gambling and then gambling with addiction and then thankfully recovery. Secondly, we'll talk about the different types of profiles and gambling support, what barriers exist, what you've seen in your experience, and what needs to change to make support more accessible and effective for everyone. And then finally, we'll discuss the gambling industry, both from the operators and the charities working in the space. I'm interested in your perspective on accountability, what's working and what isn't. So does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan.
Okay, right. Well, let's start with your story. Can you take us back to the beginning? When and how did gambling first enter your life?
Yeah, gambling came into my life when I was about 16. I started off with scratch cards, but at the beginning it hadn't formed into a full-fledged addiction at that point. It was just the odd scratch card. As I got into my 20s, drinking and going out and things like that, my friend, she loved scratch cards, and we used to just sit there and do £500 worth of scratch cards in a night and things like that, and just sit there having a drink and doing scratch cards and things. But then when we weren't friends anymore, again, I was back to just doing the odd scratch card. And then I would say in 2016 is when slots, when bingo came into my life. I played online bingo, which quickly went from bingo to slots because I wasn't getting that. Bingo's a slow process, where with slots is kind of instant. And yeah, that's when I first realised that I had a problem with gambling, was in 2016. I tried to put blockers in place and self-banned myself and things like that. And I was just playing like demo slots for a while, thinking that that's how I'd curb spending the money, getting into debt and getting myself into trouble through lying to get money and things. And I was trying to sort myself out that way. But that lasted about a year, maybe. It wasn't that long before I needed that kick back. It wasn't the same feeling as depositing money into it. And that's when I kind of worked out this crazy system of having different gambling sites in different names, like all my friends' names, my ex-partner's names, so I could deposit through their bank accounts and withdraw through their bank accounts, where I'd banned myself. And then it got to a point where I banned my friends through self-exclusion and banned my ex-partner, so that to try and stop me again from taking it to another level. It wasn't very long before I worked out certain sites that I could do it in my own name again. And this just kind of escalated. I have a cross addiction, and it kind of came hand in hand with that. And it just became, from me just doing it once or twice a week to then upping that level of escapism that it gave me. That's what I was addicted to. Like, that's what I realised I was addicted to now. It was the fact that nothing mattered when I was gambling. I didn't think, I didn't feel, I didn't care about the consequences. I was completely numb to the realities of my life, and anything that was happening in my life, that's how I could get away from it all, was by gambling. And yeah, it just took me to a really dark place, and contemplated taking my own life many times over the years, and attempted to take my own life because I couldn't see a way out of gambling. I couldn't see a way out of anything. I just thought I was being weak. I just thought that I needed to get a grip of myself. And I didn't know gambling was like a proper addiction at that point either. I just thought that, yeah, that I was being weak, that I couldn't get myself back up again, and that I just needed to get a hold and a grip of myself, but I couldn't. And after stealing money from my ex-partner, that was just the last straw of me being sick and tired of the same repetitive merry-go-round that I was on, making false promises and saying that I was going to change, saying that I wasn't going to do this or that, only just to do it again. And I know this now, but I didn't know it then, how powerless I was over gambling. And it really had just taken a hold of my life. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't leave my house. I suffered with a lot of mental health. And I pretty much lived in one room for years, pretty much just lived in my bedroom, isolated. And so my friends and that didn't get suspicious. I would just force myself to go on a night out every couple of months or see one of them every couple of months and put on that mask that I was okay. Nobody knew the extent of how bad it was. Nobody knew that I was putting my property into cash converters to get money for it. Nobody knew how much I was borrowing and how much I was lying or manipulating to get what I wanted. And it took my soul away with gambling because it just turned me into such a different person. There was complete and utter desperation in that addiction. And it's something that will never leave me, that fear of remembering what it was like. And I rang GamCare's National Helpline around this time 2 years ago, actually, yeah.
Okay.
And I started the process of having gambling therapy through them. And then I started having trauma therapy for other issues in the January of 2024. And then through GamCare's services, they referred me to Alfeliad to rehab through them called Parkland Place in the North Wales. And then I went there in April of 2024 for 6 weeks. And it's like a cognitive behavioural therapy rehab. And yeah, that was absolutely, absolutely amazing. And that's when everything changed for me.
Oh, brilliant. So glad that there was a moment of resolution and a support structure for you with that. Just going back just quickly, with regards to scratch cards, because that really interests me just in terms of it commonly being seen as a low risk activity when it comes to gambling. What was the timeline between, doing the scratch cards at what I would say is quite a high level, £500 in a night, to that moment where you phoned up GamCare? How long was that period between?
Well, that would have been from 2013, and then 10 years. 10 years.
10 years.
Because it was at the end of 2023 when I made that call to GamCare's National Helpline. So that's over 10 years. Yeah.
And did GamCare help signpost you with regard to support and therapy, with regard to other elements in your life that you were talking about that had caused you to become addicted to gambling?
Yeah. I got trauma therapy through somebody that I used to go to school with. She kindly donated the services through our company to get EFT therapy, tapping therapy. Had an amazing therapist called Ricia, and she honestly helped save my life. And through GamCare's National Helpline, they helped me with the gambling side of things and also other cross addictions. And we kind of worked out what was the most prominent addiction at the time and try and do one thing at a time. Let's deal with this and then deal with other stuff. And so it was gambling that was what I thought at the time was the biggest problem. So that's what I went into rehab for. But when I got to rehab, I was able to talk about everything.
So did you had to deal with sort of almost like a double addiction therapy in your specific case? Because there's a lot of studies that show that problem gamblers are often dealing with other substance use.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. I think it comes hand in hand for a lot of people. Either alcohol and gambling or cocaine and gambling, it can come hand in hand from a lot of people that I've met. But also there's many people that don't take any substances that have gambling harms. But there's a lot of people that it does come hand in hand with.
Okay, cool. And then one element of the story that you were talking about there is about the tools and the blocking tools that I found kind of interesting, because I experienced it just like not on a gambling level, but I have got sort of screen time blocking tools that I literally, it pops up as there going, you've done the maximum amount for your day or the day that you've set, and I can literally just click a button and remove it. Do you feel that the blocking and the safety tools that operators provide are effective, or are they easily bypassed, as in your case?
I think the one I have on my phone now is ScanBan, and that is, I can't do anything like that on my phone. That's the best one that I've found so far. There's also GamStop as well. But to be honest with you, I do think they're good, but I think that if you want to gamble, you will find a way around it. You'll find a loophole. I think that there's ways around anything, unfortunately, if you put your mind to it. And I think that that's the difference between somebody that gambles and somebody that suffers with gambling harms, because the brain work that I had in active addiction to work out stuff was insane. I don't have now. I don't have that now. I don't have the energy for it. But if I wanted to gamble in some way and I couldn't, I'd find a way. It might take me a while, but I would find a way. I think that those blockers are amazing. I've had them on my phone since the day I came into rehab. They put them on your phone for you. And yeah, but I think that there still needs to be changes to these things. I think that a lot of foreign sites people can use, which can be quite dangerous. And I think that those kind of things can be looked at and changed massively, because they will target you so badly, and they will send texts and phone calls to say that, they will show you a way around these bans, unfortunately. And if you've got your number in the system from when you was in active addiction, I mean, I still get texts today, multiple times in a week.
From regulated or unregulated companies? Both. I think that's one of the one of the most repulsive things that I've seen in the gambling industry, and it's less so on the regulated side and more so on the black market crypto side, where they're actively targeting problem gamblers or people in recovery, by saying, gam ban or gam stop listed, that they're actively can bypass all of these blocking websites. And you're just looking at it, you're like, the morality of people that are running these things where they're actively targeting people who don't want to gamble.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
It's really, really, it is disgusting.
And they entice you with free money, cash, with being able to withdraw that cash, I just think it's so disgusting. If you've put yourself on banning sites, it's for a reason. It's because you recognise that things are getting out of hand. It's because you're in a bad situation, and they know that. They are aware of that. They're not stupid people. These are business people. And I think it's absolutely abhorrent that they will go around all of that just to suck you back in. And I won't lie, like, there's been some messages over my time in sobriety in recovery that I see these messages and for a split second you're like, oh, I could withdraw that money. Do you know what I mean? And I think luckily I'll do recovery every day, but it always makes me think of the people that don't have that yet, that are just trying on their own to make themselves better. And then you just got these people that are just vultures that want to come in and show people how they can get around it. I just think it's awful.
Yeah. And without naming names, just to clarify this. So when it comes to regulated companies, you're saying that you've had contact from regulated companies that know that you're on GamCare, GamBan and GamStop. Are they purporting to be, one, is it UK regulated operators? So people done by the UK Gambling Commission. And then secondly, do you think it might be sort of casino operators or platforms purporting to be the authentic or the regulated body?
I'm not too sure if it's regulated. I just get a lot of emails. I think that most of them are in the UK, from what I'm aware of, from what I remember from when I was playing on those sites. But yeah, I will still get emails. I got an email yesterday for one, and I haven't had an email from that particular company for ages. So I was like, oh, that's odd. But I just unsubscribe and I just delete. I had like 50 emails, different email addresses in active addiction, and I deleted all of them.
Okay.
But there's one of them that I couldn't delete because of all the other stuff that I forgot in that email, attached to that email. But I just unsubscribe and block and just report it as spam. But yeah.
Okay. And just another point, going back to your story that I found interesting. When you were using your friends or your partners' bank details and contacts to bypass these bans, were you being honest with them, or were you being sort of
they knew,
deceitful for want of a bit? They knew.
They knew that I was signing up in their name and that I'd put money in their bank so that I could deposit and things like that, so that it all seemed legit on the on the sites front, so that if I did win, I could withdraw it and it would go into their banks. And then what I would do is I'd give them a little treat out of it, and then they transfer the rest to my bank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Now, we did have a conversation prior to this podcast, and we were talking about stereotypes and profiles of people that you commonly associate with gambling harm. And I think we were both in agreement that if you were to close your eyes and imagine somebody with gambling harm, there most likely would be a white male that you see outside the bookies or outside the pub as being commonly associated with gambling harm. How did your perception of who gets addicted affect or delay the recognition of your own journey?
I think that years ago in 2016, when I realised I had a problem and everything was out of hand, and I Googled what is a gambling addict, and all I saw was white men, no women at all, white men that were very rich, that had money, like to remortgage their homes and things like that, that got into gambling harms, that was telling their stories of what they'd gone through. And I thought, well, I don't gamble anywhere near that type of money. And I just thought, well, I can't be a gambling addict because I thought to be a gambling addict, you had to have a lot of money, for one. And I thought that big money bets made you a gambling addict. I thought what I was doing was kind of pathetic. And I thought, it's not the same. I had this, what I now see as a very ignorant stereotype of what I thought a gambling addict was. And that was white men outside the bookies with a beer. But I have seen that my whole life. But I realise now that is just a stereotype, that is just, there's so much more different people. You just don't necessarily see them standing outside the shops. What I have learned in my time in recovery is that in Asian communities and other ethnic minority communities, they sometimes have deals with their local bookies where they can go through the back so they don't get seen and things like that. And then they'll be inside the shop, which is what you're not going to see. And that goes on quite more frequently than what people think, because they don't want their families or friends to see them. And yeah, so I just didn't think I was a gambling addict. I didn't think I had enough money for it. And I kind of put that out of my head at that time.
I mean, I think you touched on something there that's really important. Whenever you hear about gambling harm or gambling addiction, and invariably it will always involve quite sensational headlines in so much as, this company accountant stole £1.4 million to fund their gambling habit. And it would always be 6 or high 5 figures in terms of the coverage, because that's what gets people's attention in this society where we're slaves to the algorithm. But you touched on a point there whereby it doesn't have to be a lot of money to be a problem, and it's all relative to the life you're living or leading. Because I think a lot of the platforms and the operators will get regulatory fines or pulled up on elements of their gambling activity, and it's always through the big numbers, somebody dropping £30,000 in a day or something like that, whereas you're saying a completely different story. And I've spoken to a few people and they would be in agreement with you that it doesn't need to be a massive amount of money in order for it to be a problem. And I think that's one of the main things that we need to sort of address.
Yeah, 100%, because I think that the people behind the screens, the operators and things like that, they are concentrating on these big losses, and those are the accounts that will get flagged up. And I think that the reason why I like speaking about this is because I want the operators and people behind the scenes to realise that concentrate on the small money as well. Because yes, somebody say I'm losing 200 quid in a week, right? To an operator, I'm sure that's not very much money to them. And I understand that. But to me, it's everything. It's all I had, and because of that, I'm not eating, going without and things like that, because it's taken a hold of me. And I think that would be the same story for a lot of people. I don't think it doesn't matter about money. It's about how much time someone's spending gambling. And that's what it needs to be merited on. That's what needs to be flagged up, that this person spent days gambling, days and days and days and days gambling. And they're stretching out 20 quid to make them last ages, whereby putting the smallest bets for a spin on, because you don't have that much money, but you need to gamble. So you make it last as long as possible before you lose it all. And I think that's really important to be noticed, because my account never got flagged up. I mean, there's one site in particular that I can honestly say their gambling harms help services on their site, it was one of the best. And when they noticed that you spent a certain amount of money, they cut you off themselves for about 60 to 90 days at a time, sometimes depending on what your losses were. And you couldn't play on their site at all. They'd just take you off of it until to give you, they'd self-exclude you themselves. And sometimes that saved me, do you know what I mean, from making even more worse decisions than I was already making at the time. That was really, really helpful. We talk about this a lot, and I know there's so many people in the gambling recovery space that are working so hard and effortlessly to make these changes, and that they are talking about those kinds of things and trying to make changes. So it's not just a simple text of, we've noticed that you've been gambling for such and such amount of time, are you okay? And rather working towards making it a little bit more personable, making it so that you can maybe have a phone call or something like that. Because I think a text, I'm not listening to a text. From my own personal experience, I'm deleting that text. I don't even want to see it. I'm rolling my eyes thinking, I ain't got a problem. Well, I don't need to have this text.
Yeah. And just with regards to moving on to the second part, just in terms of like profiles that we were talking about of your typical gambling harm demographics. When you went into recovery, when you were on either the phone calls or you went to the residential, how much of your fellow gambling harm patients, I think, want of a better word, is it patients or is it not patients, or just people, isn't it?
Patients, people, I'm not too sure.
Yeah. But what was the male-female split? What was the split of ethnic minorities? Can you give me some breakdown about that? By the people that do it were seeking recovery, but also the people that were providing the services.
So I was the only female when I went into rehab, which I knew that I was going to be the only female. We'd had many conversations about my comfortability with that and things like that. I think there was all men, and I was the only black person there, and there was an Asian man there as well. But apart from that, everybody else was white, and all the staff was white as well. But I mean, I wasn't expecting much difference in the North of Wales, I can't lie. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, they were all lovely. I think that going into a rehab as a woman without any other females there were female staff, plenty of them, but I think it just raised another lot of safety aspect questions to make sure that I was going to be safe, because obviously you don't know what types of people you're going to be around. I was very lucky in the sense that the people that I spent my time in rehab with we was all just like one big family. We were such a team and built such friendships, you know, in our time together as support. So yeah, that's how it was.
And do you think that sort of environment that you cope with and, you know, eventually was successful in that environment, do you think that would be a drawback for other types of people, that would it almost sort of not prevent them, but hold them back from looking for support?
I'm not too sure. I think it will differ person to person. I think that a woman might be uncomfortable of going to a rehab where it's all just going to be men. I think that would be more of a concern for women. And I think that people would naturally feel more comfortable if they was around people that looked like them or spoke like them or understood their culture a little bit better. But I do think that the staff or your therapists and things like that are just such an amazing support. But I don't know, initially that might make people think, oh no, that's not the place for me.
Was it quite a draining? Was it 6 weeks you were in?
Yeah.
In that residential? And I'd imagine it's quite emotionally draining to go through that process. What do you do? Is it sort of like group sessions, individuals, a mixture?
Yeah, so we have a morning meditation session. We get our plans. We know what we're going to do today. We get our schedules on Sunday nights for the week. And yeah, it's a very strict routine: group therapy, one-on-one sessions, lunch, an activity session, reflections at the end of the day, dinner, TV time. It's quite, your whole day's cut out for you, but there's also time for yourself. And that's one of the things that I struggled with, that time alone. But it kind of prepares you for when you leave. It's like learning to sit
Mm.
with yourself, learning to sit with your own company, learning to find comfortability in boredom, because so many people use things because they're bored. And it's learning how to fill up your own time. And I thought that was a really good teaching method that they used in there.
And did you go back home at weekends, or was it
No,
sort
just
of
straight 6 weeks. Yeah.
6 weeks, no visits from the family? I
Yeah,
presume you had contact in the evenings,
I
or
had my phone an hour in the evening time. Yeah, an hour in the evening. And that was fine. But to be honest with you, I loved not having my phone, really, for that time. I really did. It was just so freeing to not be plagued by my phone. And I was really scared about losing my phone, because obviously my phone was everything to me at that point, because that's where I gambled, that's where I escaped. And so not having that was really, really scary, but it was really very peaceful without it, I must say.
yeah, I've had that when I've broken my phone and I've had to send it
Yeah.
off to get repaired. And for the first sort of like day, you're constantly reaching for something that's not there. And then you do after the second or third day, you're like, I'm actually enjoying not having this
Yeah.
compulsion to sort of like pick it up and see, what the new notifications. And then when the phone comes back, you're there, you literally like, they're going, right, now I've enjoyed this. I'm going to spend a little bit less screen time,
Yeah.
but it's quite pervasive. And I think would be akin to sort of gambling addiction in so much that it is literally everywhere. So say like the phone is not just a phone, it's your camera, it's your diary, it's
Yeah.
your getting access to your bank account, it's making lists, it's your social network. There's so many things on it, but equally at the same time, it is a route one to load of gambling platforms. And it's something that I really worry about with not only myself, I worry about that because I feel that I could potentially be at risk to that, but also my son as well,
Yeah.
who does a lot of gaming, and he's coming up to that age where I'm going to have to give him his phone for as he becomes more and more independent. But were there parts of the recovery and the journey where you was having breakthroughs, or is it more of a gradual thing? So then when you went back home, you had all of that skill set and the guardrails and what to do in order to stop going back to what the problem had become.
I think that I had a lot of breakthroughs there in the therapies and the things that they taught us about our behavior, about our nervous system, about our trigger points and why we react the way that we do. A lot about trauma and how it all connects, and learning how to self-soothe my emotions and regulate my own emotions, things that I just never been taught before, really, really benefited me in that situation, and really prepared me of how I would cope when I got home. I still use a lot of the tools that I learned there. I still use them every day today, and because they keep me in good stead, they keep me grounded when life shows up. I think learning about myself and why I'd ended up to this point was really, really beneficial to me. Realizing that it wasn't because I was weak. It wasn't like a personality flaw, and learning like the brain chemistry of an addiction as well. Like that really, really helped me. And even though it's not a mind altering substance, when you first start gambling, it does alter your brain eventually. And that was really interesting to learn, because it just made me feel like understood and validated. And also they don't just teach you, like, they don't just focus on your addiction so much. It's more about the behaviors behind the addiction, why you want to escape. Let's heal the reasons why you want to escape. Let's heal that. Let's build a life that you don't need to escape from, and giving you those tools to handle them when it's too stressful and when you're feeling overwhelmed, and meditation and breath work and all of these things that I use in my everyday life now. And I think just learning those and having people to listen to you and understand where you're coming from, and also being surrounded by your peers, by everybody else that's in the rehab and in our group talks and things like that, hearing how they felt in their own personal journeys and being able to relate in that was huge. Because when you're in active addiction and you're so isolated, you honestly feel like you're the only person in the world that's going through it, that's suffering in that way. So And I didn't know anyone that gambled around me, not to the extent that I was gambling. I just didn't, none of my friends gamble like that. And so I didn't have anybody to talk to about this at all. So when I got there and I did have people that understood, that was just mind blowing to me. And when they was
Mm.
explaining their own journeys, I was like, that's what I used to do. That's what I used to do, you know? And that was a huge difference, absolutely huge difference. Just that level of understanding was brilliant.
When you're looking at gambling operators and platforms today, you know, what do you see? Do you see as sort of a genuine commitment to safer gambling, or do you see them primarily as just complying with the regulations and using it as an exercise to validate their operations?
No, I see genuinely wanting to make differences and changes. I think that from what I've seen and some of the work that I've done speaking on panels and things like that is that they are trying to understand. And that's why I think lived experience is so necessary, because I think it's making a huge impact in the recovery space when these big companies from all around the world are listening to the people it's generally affected. Lived experience either from someone that's gone through it or an affected other makes a huge difference to these companies, because it puts a face to it. They can't just they can't just look at their screens and the statistics and all of these things that they study, that they suddenly have a real person in their face that have gone through real things because they suffered with
Mm.
gambling harms, because there wasn't more safer things in place to help somebody. And and they know that their flagging system and all these things have to be changed. And I do see people working a lot and having many conversations to make those changes. And it's something I'm really excited about, actually, because I think that I think a lot of change will happen in the next year regarding those things.
Yeah. Well, the new statutory levy is coming in that has shaken up the charity and the gambling harm support services. And I think one of the elements of it that a couple of people within my network were talking about lived experience, and that lived experience has proven to be such a successful strategy when it comes to displaying the harms of gambling, but also helping people in recovery and finding a pathway. But I think this new statutory levy might be falling a little bit short on that, which would be a real shame, because there's so many good people out there that are willing to share their experience and their knowledge, and you know, all of the elements that somebody, when you're sitting in a room whereby you previously had a very isolated experience as a gambling addict, are suddenly faced with somebody who can look you in the eyes and say, I've been there, I've experienced what you've experienced, and I've got through the other side. And this is how you can try different elements in order to get there.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat that? Because I just completely, when you was talking, I've got my phone on do not disturb, but the messages come down, and then
Yeah, that's all right.
somebody in that gambling recovery group chat is upset because they're on GamCare and they've just received one of those emails about going to an
Have they?
offering site, and they're upset. So that just distracted me. I apologise.
Okay. Well, that's fine. And I'd love to keep this in. So you're a member of like WhatsApp groups,
Yeah.
that whereby you support each other. How do you find these groups, or do they find you of other people that have got this?
So when I was in rehab, people came to see us from the Epic Restart Foundation, and
Yeah.
two people came to see us. They were absolutely amazing. They shared their lived experience with us. They shared what their foundation does, and that was absolutely amazing. And hearing their lived experiences and what they do, that's where I say my passion came from, wanting to be in this space myself. It ignited something in me that day that has just never left. And then the rehab, they also referred me to Vet No More New Beginnings with Lisa and Sue. And the day that I came out of rehab, Lisa rang me and told me what groups were available, what they do, what they're all about, the support that they offer. And yeah, and then I got on that was on the Friday. She would ring me on the Monday, which she did. And then I got all the details for the groups. Same with Epic, went on to, they do a few events, team building events every year, and recovery events. And I went on all of those, and I went to all of the groups, and I still do today. I go to all of the groups still.
That's really good. So a member of like 3, 4, 5 different communities that are all there to help you in your recovery. I guess it was sort of like that. The WhatsApp group that you just mentioned there is pinging all the day, just other people giving support to each other. Right?
Yeah, we all support each other, and if you're having a bad day, or we celebrate each other, we're there for each other, the ups and downs. It's a beautiful group. It really, really is a beautiful group, and we've all built such good friendships in these groups. And even if you don't recognize the name that's coming up in the group, it doesn't matter. You just message them back and just say, "Do you want to chat?" And I see it all the time.
Yeah, so people put out sort of like I'm having a bad day. Whatever, somebody, and then you just contact them, have a chat with them, and help them on their way, I guess.
Yeah, and then we just all support each other, and it's nice. I'm not always heavily into the group chats, but I do know. But when messages come up, if anybody needs support or anything, I don't mind jumping in and trying to offer any supports or suggestions, or just listening, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, you just know that there's always a safe place to go within these groups.
Just with regard to what you were talking about with regards to lived experience, is this something that you want to move into moving forward?
Yeah, 100%. I love doing lived experience. I love helping people to the best of my ability through my own lived experience. I love being a peer aid mentor and helping people make the choices that they need to make to better their lives. And I think there's so much power in lived experience. There's so much power in talking, and I just think you learn something so much. But I also love doing like panels and things like that, and getting to talk to the operators and getting to talk to all these different people and sharing my lived experience with them, because that's where the changes need to happen. And I love being a part of that change in any way that I can. If it's going to help somebody else, then it's worth it to me.
So is that your plan for 2026 to, either do consultancy or do the speaking route at events, and on both sides, both on the trade show element, but also more so in the sort of like lived experience in the gambling harm sector?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to get into either or, and there's been a few conversations with people, and we're just going to see what direction it takes us after the new year.
Okay. Well, I for what it's worth, in some ways, I'm really sad and sorry to have heard your story about how it came to be. But then I'm thankful that, that you saw the pathway through, and that you had the framework and the scaffolding to help you successfully overcome your addiction to gambling. And then on the plus side, as a double positive, I think, the gambling harm industry and the gambling industry full stop would hugely benefit from having somebody like yourself working within the lived experience, because as you mentioned earlier, I don't think it is the profile of a white middle-aged man. Gambling is quite a pervasive industry, and gambling harm is a pervasive industry, and it can happen to anyone, young, old, male, female, white, any of the minority communities. And I think that has to be the narrative, right? Just in terms of, opening it up, because I think the first hesitation or the first problem when it comes to gambling harm is people trying to acknowledge it earlier and reaching out for a support at the first opportunity in order to make it more successful in terms of healing and in terms of recovery, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that it can affect anyone, anytime, anywhere. There isn't a demographic that there's not one demographic that it fits. It can happen to anybody. It's the same with any other addiction, and I just hope that people just get the courage to reach out for help, because it's so readily available. There's so many different services and different ways to recover. It's not one shoe fits all, and just think it's a beautiful time to do it.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you. I'll grab some of those contact details that you mentioned in terms of support groups or where people should go. Personally, just point people to Gamble Aware, GamCare. But if you've got any other additional ones that you'd recommend, I will
just Bet No
put
More
those in
and
the show notes.
Yeah, Bet No More and Epic Restart Foundation. I'd say those are the two ones that I'm still in today.
Yeah.
And they're really good because you've got the other ones covered. So yeah, they're really good. I know that GamStop offers support online, and they have their own groups as well. They're women's only groups and mixed groups. So yeah, and every single one of those foundations, they've all got women's groups as well, and mixed groups and things like that.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Well, listen, Kiki, thank you for sharing your story today. I know it's a hard thing to do, but you've done it with honesty and in a way that just makes it encouraging. Is a bit of a weird word, but it's just sort of like it's just such a positive story that you've come from the depths of where you were to how you're talking on this podcast today. So I just really wanted to say thank you, because it's a courageous thing to do, and it's an admirable thing that you're wanting to help people in ways that people helped you. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do it? Is it on LinkedIn as I found you, or do you have any other
I've got
socials?
LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Just type my name in and then I should come up. Just Kiki Marriott.
Those.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll put those contact points in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
So thanks again today for listening. Thank you again for your time, Kiki. It is much appreciated. If you found this conversation valuable, please share it with somebody, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks a million.
Bye.